Good morning from Frontiers Camp. My name's Finch. I'm the assistant major of the Rocky Mountain Fur Company. This week's instructional video is knots and lashings. Today I'm going to show you how to do a tripod lashing, and in this example we're going to build a bench or a sawhorse that you can use as a camp gadget. Alright, take a look. This is our main spar that we're using. It's about 10 feet long, and the other two are shorter. They're going to be the legs of your bench. Now I notched them here at corresponding lengths so that you know that the feet are even on this side. We're going to start our tripod lashing with a constrictor knot. Usually you start it with a clove hitch, but I like to keep things a little fancy. Constrictor is a much better knot, so here's how we're going to do it. Can you see this? Awesome. Tie your constrictor by looping it over, making your X, coming back over top. Oops. Pardon me. And then make an overhand knot, like such. And slip it under the loop you made. You can reference my previous video on how better to make a constrictor knot if you want some more clarification. But that's how we're going to start. Just like that. Now we're going to take it and we're going to wind it over, under, over, under. And basically, if I line up, where'd it go? If I line up these two notches, I'll make sure I have my legs at the same length. There you go. 1, 2. Three, 4, and I'm going to go for 5 and 6. Wrapping turns. Now I like to make sure that they are nice and tight after I do them, because that tightness is gonna make or break this lashing. And you know what? I got a little extra rope. I'm gonna wrap them one more, because you'll see in a second when we stand it up, a little bit of tension and some really attention to detail and some tight lashings is what makes this thing stand up on its own. There. Now from there, I'm going to slide it forward a little bit. From there, we're going to do our frapping turns, which basically takes the tension out of each of these wraps and basically crunches it and tightens it right up. And by doing that, it ensures that any if you didn't wrap them tightly enough, this takes all the tension right out of them. You hear that? That's a good sound. Now, when you wrap them, you basically got to keep tension here. Keep pulling on the rope. You don't want to relax it, right? Because that'll take all the tension out of your lashing. So you just keep pulling while you frap. So that's 2. I like doing 3 aside. Nice. Now from there, you basically hop over one bay and do the same thing. I like to alternate directions. There's 2. There's 3. I got a little bit of rope to burn up, so I might as well just keep going. Child-proof this thing and make it so strong that nothing is going to pull it apart. So here you go. There's 5 fraps on that side. We'll wrap it back over, keeping tension on it. There, 4 or 5 on that side, and now you end it with a clove hitch. Now it's a little tricky doing a clove hitch when you're coming from a corner like this. So I run this tail underneath the loop I just made to start that clove hitch. Now you're on the correct side. So if you made your first loop, you're about to make your second loop. Over, right? Over. This is what provides your tension. And then this tail tucks under that to finish off that nice, beautiful clove hitch. So I've stood it up. We've got it's basically a sawhorse right now. We've got our 2 tripod lashings on the end. The legs are crossed underneath. It's all lashed together, but the cross piece is resting on top of these 2 crossed legs. So the legs are supporting the weight of the cross piece and whatever you're gonna put on it, AKA a human being, right? But it is rickety. It's kind of wiggly because there's no strength. You know, it's kind of held up, but the tightness of the lashings are the only thing that are keeping it from falling down right now. I can't physically splay those feet any farther in either direction because the tightness of this tripod lashing is preventing me. What I'm going to do to prevent it from racking from side to side is add a diagonal brace with some diagonal lashings so that it creates some nice structural triangles to keep this thing together. So I put on a diagonal brace to our bench. I did it with a diagonal lashing over here, tying it off to a leg, and then I held it in place with the main cross piece of the bench with a round lashing over here. The round lashing is simple. You start off with a constrictor and then you wind the rope around both members, finish with a clove hitch. Super simple, but it ties them together. So that makes a very narrow triangle here that locks everything together. I'm going to show you how to finish it off over here with another diagonal lashing to make this whole thing rock solid. So start this diagonal lashing with a timber hitch, which is super simple. throw your rope over this junction of these two spars, and then you turn around and you make a bite, which is simply a loop of rope, like so. And then you take your tail and you wind it back. Wind it back around itself. There's no knot required, it's just the friction of the rope. And then you take it and you crank up and down on it until it's nice and tight. That's the start of your diagonal. And now you start your wrapping turns. So your wraps are going around both of these spars. And it's diagonal because it goes from one angle to the other angle. So we're doing the two big angles right now with 3 good wraps. And now you want to tighten after each one. So there's 1, 2, 3. 3 will bring us all the way around, except I got a weird knot here, a weird stick. So you know what? I'll do a 4th one, just to hold things in place. No pioneering spar is absolutely perfect, so you just have to work with what you got. Trick is keep them tight. So now that they're tight, that's a good thing. This might be an ugly lashing, but it'll hold. So then you take the path of least resistance to get to your next 2 angles. We're doing the smaller 2 angles now for our next few wraps, right? So you don't want to be doing this weird, like, crossing great distances to get to your next thing. You just want to keep that rope wrapping around the junction and make it to your next 2. So we're just gonna wrap it over and then go underneath and start our wraps here now between the 2 acute angles, the 2 smaller angles. And it doesn't matter if you start on the wider angles or the smaller angles. It's usually easier to start on the wide ones and wrap your timber hitch around it because that holds things together a little better. And then here, this secondary is to finish out the lashing. So there's 2. You see how much they tighten up? That's a good thing. 3, and you know what? We have the rope for it. Let's do 4, just because we can. There. Now from here, it's sticking up. Basically, for the frapping turns, I'm gonna wrap the rope around this plane that kind of dissects the two spars. So it's gonna go underneath the top one and over top of the bottom one. It's like if you were trying to separate these two, that's what the fraps do. Except what they really do is tighten the whole thing up. Basically takes any looseness out of these wrapping turns and it puts more tension on it. There's 2. There's 3. Now in order to finish this off, you want to finish off with a clove hitch. We're coming out of this in a kind of a funky angle. So what I'm going to do for the clove hitch is I'm going to start my first turn, wrap it around once, and then put the clove underneath. Basically, start it off on this side. So tighten this up. And then I can do my second wrap over. Remember, this one crosses over because that is what puts the tension on the 2 wraps you make around the spar. And then for the third one, I tuck my tail in. Tuck my tail in like so. That's a capital N. That's how we know we did it right. Push those 2 together and cinch it down. And that is a solid diagonal lashing. Well, as you can see, that diagonal brace improved the strength and stability of our bench significantly. So I feel comfortable sitting on it, and enjoying my day as a frontiersman. So please feel free to follow my example, practice your lashings. This is a real world, full-scale example. But I'd like to see what you can do in your homes, in your backyards, using small-scale models, whatever you can put together. If you have 2 broomsticks and some twine and can do a diagonal lashing, I'd love to see it. If you have some popsicle sticks and some paracord and are able to put it together, I'd like to see it. So thank you, and show me what you got.